When we think about powerful fathers in the world of Westeros, Tywin Lannister immediately comes to mind. The man who served as Hand of the King, who orchestrated the Red Wedding, who commanded absolute respect and fear in equal measure. But what if I told you that everything Tywin tried to be as a father, everything he failed to accomplish with his children, had already been done better by a Targaryen prince who lived nearly a century before him? Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating parallels between Prince Maekar Targaryen and Tywin Lannister, two men who desperately wanted to forge powerful legacies through their children, but whose approaches and outcomes could not have been more different. Let's start by understanding who Prince Maekar actually was, because if you've only watched the main Game of Thrones series, you might not be familiar with this incredibly important figure in Targaryen history. Maekar was the fourth son of King Daeron II, known as Daeron the Good. Now, being a fourth son in a royal family meant that Maekar was never supposed to inherit anything significant. He wasn't groomed for the throne the way his older brothers were. He was given Summerhall, a summer palace, as his seat, and he took a personal sigil, a quartered Targaryen dragon, specifically because he knew he would always stand in the shadow of his more illustrious siblings. Sound familiar? This is remarkably similar to how Tywin grew up in the shadow of his father Tytos' weakness, always feeling like he had something to prove. But here's where these two men begin to diverge dramatically. Both Maekar and Tywin were powerfully built, militarily gifted commanders who earned their reputations through blood and steel. Maekar fought in multiple Blackfire rebellions and was famous for the hammer and anvil tactic he employed alongside his brother Baelor Breakspear at the Battle of the Redgrass Field. Tywin crushed the rebellious Houses Reyne and Tarbeck, drowning the Reynes in their own castle of Castamere and inspiring the haunting song that would become the Lannister anthem. Both men were warriors, strategists, and ruthlessly effective commanders. Both men married well, Maekar to Diana Dane and Tywin to his cousin Joanna Lannister. And both men had children who would shape the future of Westeros in profound ways. Now let's talk about their sons, because this is where the comparison becomes truly fascinating. Maekar had four sons, Daeron, Aerion, Aemon, and Aegon, whom we know better as Egg. Tywin had three children, though we'll focus primarily on his sons, Jaime and Tyrion. Both fathers looked at their children and saw the future of their houses. Both wanted to mold them into instruments of family power and legacy. But the way they went about it reveals everything about who these men really were. Let's examine Maekar's relationship with his eldest son, Daeron. Now, Daeron was not what you'd call a traditional warrior prince. He had prophetic dragon dreams. He disliked horses and swords, and he preferred spending time in taverns over training yards. He was called Daeron the Drunken, and by all accounts, he was a disappointment to a father who valued martial prowess above almost everything else. Sound like anyone we know? Tyrion Lannister, Tywin's youngest son, was similarly dismissed by his father for being a dwarf, for preferring books to swords, for seeking comfort in wine and women. Both Daeron and Tyrion were the disappointing intellectual sons who failed to live up to their father's expectations of what a son should be. But here's the crucial difference. When Maekar attended the tourney at Ashford Meadow, bringing his sons with him, and Daeron predictably avoided the fighting and disappeared to drink, Maekar was disappointed, yes, but he didn't disown him. He didn't publicly humiliate him. When Daeron later lied to protect his brother Aerion, claiming that a hedge knight named Sir Duncan the Tall had attacked him, Daeron was forced into a trial by combat. During that trial, Daeron was knocked from his horse and chose to stay down, withdrawing from the fight. His own horse then stepped on him, possibly breaking his foot. And you know what Maekar's reaction was? Not rage at his son's cowardice or weakness. Instead, after the trial concluded and his brother Baelor lay dying from wounds accidentally inflicted by Maekar's own mace, the prince had to confront the fact that his eldest son had shown more wisdom than valor, and more importantly, more honor than his second son had shown. When Daeron later became heir to the Iron Throne after Maekar took the crown, his father didn't try to force him into a role he wasn't suited for. Daeron preferred to be called Prince of Summerhall rather than Prince of Dragonstone because he found Dragonstone too gloomy, and Maekar allowed this. He let his son have that preference. Can you imagine Tywin Lannister allowing such a thing? When Daeron eventually died, reportedly from a pox caught from a prostitute, though his brother Aemon suggested the dragon dreams themselves had killed him, Maekar mourned him genuinely. This was his disappointing, drunken, non-martial son, and Maekar grieved for him as a father should. Now contrast this with how Tywin treated Tyrion. From the moment Tyrion was born, killing his mother, Joanna in the process, Tywin wanted to kill him. He admits as much later, saying he wanted to carry the baby Tyrion into the sea and be done with him, but he didn't because of the family name. Tyrion grew up knowing his father despised him, blamed him for his mother's death, and saw him as a stain on the Lannister legacy. Every interaction between them drips with contempt from Tywin's side. When Tyrion actually proves himself as Hand of the King during the Battle of the Blackwater, saving King's Landing through brilliant strategy and personal courage, does Tywin thank him? Reward him? No. He strips Tyrion of his position, gives him no credit for the victory, and refuses to name him heir to Casterly Rock. When Tyrion later asks what he ever did to deserve such hatred, Tywin's response is chilling. "You're no son of mine. Let's move to the second sons," because here the parallels get even more interesting. Maekar's second son was Aerion Brightflame, and if there was ever a Targaryen who embodied everything wrong with the phrase, madness and greatness are two sides of the same coin, it was Aerion. He was cruel, arrogant, possibly insane, and believed he was literally a dragon in human form. At the Ashford tourney, Aerion attacked a Dornish puppeteer named Tansel for performing a play where knights defeated a dragon, seeing it as an insult to House Targaryen. When Duncan the Tall intervened to save her, Aerion had him arrested and called for a trial by combat, specifically a trial of 7, to destroy him. This was Maekar's son acting with incredible cruelty and dishonor, dragging the family name through the mud with his behavior. And how did Maekar respond? After the trial, in which his brother Baelor was mortally wounded and Aerion's guilt was clear, Maekar banished Aerion to the free cities. He sent him away, removed him from positions of power and influence because he recognized that his son was dangerous and unstable. When Aerion later returned and participated in the Third Blackfyre Rebellion, fighting alongside his father and brother Aegon, Maekar kept him close enough to monitor but never gave him significant command or authority. And when Aerion eventually died from drinking wildfire because he believed it would turn him into a dragon, Maekar had to live with the knowledge that his son had been mad, but at least he had prevented Aerion from gaining real power where he could hurt others on a massive scale. Now, let's look at Jaime Lannister. Jaime was everything Tywin could have wanted in an heir. Tall, handsome, the greatest swordsman of his generation, a member of the Kingsguard at 15. But Tywin's relationship with Jaime reveals his fundamental failure as a father. When Jaime joined the Kingsguard, effectively removing himself from the line of succession to Casterly Rock, Tywin saw it not as his son's choice or honor, but as a political maneuver by the Mad King to deprive him of his heir. He never asked Jaime what he wanted. He never considered that Jaime might have joined the Kingsguard because Cersei was in King's Landing, and Jaime wanted to be near her. Later, when Tywin offers Jaime Casterly Rock if he'll leave the Kingsguard, and Jaime refuses because, despite everything, he still believes in some of those vows, Tywin disowns him. His perfect golden son refuses to be the puppet Tywin wants, and so Tywin casts him aside just as readily as he did Tyrion. The third son comparison is perhaps the most telling of all. Maekar's third son was Aemon, who would eventually become Maester Aemon of the Night's Watch, the wise old man who advised Jon Snow at Castle Black. When Aemon was young, King Daeron II decided that having too many potential Targaryen heirs was dangerous and sent Aemon to the Citadel to become a Maester, despite Maekar's objections. Maekar didn't want to lose his son to the Citadel. He argued against it, but when the decision was made, he accepted it. And later, when Maekar became king and his eldest son Daeron died, he summoned Aemon back to court to serve, not to force him back into the line of succession, but to have him serve his brother Daeron as his personal Maester. Maekar respected Aemon's choice to become a Maester and found a way to keep his son close while honoring that choice. After Maekar's own death and the succession crisis that followed, when Aemon was offered the crown because his older brothers Daeron and Aerion were both dead and Aegon was considered too young or questionable by some, Aemon refused and went to the wall specifically to prevent anyone from using him as a puppet to challenge his younger brother's rule. And you know what? This decision, this sacrifice, was only possible because Maekar had raised Aemon with enough wisdom and honor that when the moment came, Aemon knew what duty really meant. He didn't learn that from his time at the Citadel alone. That foundation came from his father. The fourth and youngest sons are where we see the ultimate success or failure of these two fathers. Maekar's youngest was Aegon, better known as Egg, the boy who would become King Aegon V, Aegon the Unlikely, one of the most beloved kings in Westeros history. When Egg was young, he sneaked away from the Ashford tourney and became the squire to Duncan the Tall, the same hedge knight who had protected Tencel and accidentally caused Baelor's death. Think about this for a moment. A prince of the blood, grandson of the king, secretly becomes a squire to a hedge knight, lying about his identity and living a common life. When Maekar discovered this, he could have erupted in fury. He could have dragged Egg back to court and punished Duncan severely. Instead, after seeing how Aerion and Daeron had turned out, after seeing Duncan's simple honor and courage, Maekar made an extraordinary decision. He told Duncan that he wouldn't force Egg to return, but he also wouldn't publicly acknowledge their relationship. He gave Egg a signet ring with his personal seal for emergencies and made him promise to keep his hair shaved or dyed to hide his Targaryen identity. Then he let his youngest son go off to adventure with a hedge knight to learn about the real world, to understand the realm he might someday help govern, from the ground level up. This was an act of incredible trust and wisdom. Maekar knew that his traditional approach hadn't worked with his older sons. Daeron was bookish and dreamful. Aerion was mad. Aemon had chosen the Citadel. So with Egg, he tried something different. He let his son learn honor and duty from a simple, honest knight rather than from courtly teachers. He let Egg see the realm as it truly was, not through the lens of privilege and power. And it worked. Egg grew up to be a king who cared about the common people, who understood their suffering, who tried to institute reforms to help them. He was called the Unlikely because he was a fourth son who never should have inherited, but he became one of the greatest Targaryen kings specifically because of the unconventional education Maekar allowed him to have. Tywin had no fourth son to compare, but let's examine his overall approach to fatherhood in contrast to Maekar's. Tywin's fundamental problem was that he saw his children exclusively as extensions of his own ambition, as tools to build the Lannister legacy he obsessed over. When they failed to be perfect instruments of his will, he either discarded them like Tyrion or tried to force them into roles they didn't want, like with Jaime and Cersei. He arranged Cersei's marriage to Robert Baratheon purely for political advantage without considering whether she would be happy or safe. When that marriage turned into a nightmare of abuse and infidelity, did Tywin care? No. All that mattered was the political alliance and the children it produced. He repeatedly tried to marry Cersei off again after Robert's death, to Loras Tyrell, treating her like a chess piece to be moved around the board. He arranged Tyrion's marriage to Sansa Stark with zero consideration for either person's feelings, seeing it only as a way to claim the North. Every single decision Tywin made regarding his children came from cold political calculation, never from love, never from a genuine desire to see them happy or fulfilled. Maekar, by contrast, while certainly ambitious for his house and certainly disappointed by some of his son's choices, never treated them as mere tools. When Duncan the Tall proved himself honorable in the trial of 7, Maekar didn't have him executed for the role he played in Baelor's death. Instead, he offered Duncan a position in his personal guard specifically to serve as a role model for young Egg. When Duncan refused, Maekar didn't take offense. He accepted it and let Egg go anyway. This shows a father who, despite his own pain and loss, could recognize quality in others and could trust his son to learn from a good man, even if that man was a low-born hedge knight. Let's talk about the concept of legacy because both men were obsessed with it, but in very different ways. Tywin's famous line, "A lion doesn't concern himself with the opinion of sheep," perfectly encapsulates his worldview. The Lannisters are above everyone else. Fear and respect through strength and ruthlessness are all that matter. The Reigns of Castamere isn't just a song, it's a threat. Do what we want, or we will end your entire house. Tywin built his legacy on terror and gold, on the understanding that House Lannister would do anything, violate any custom, break any oath to come out on top. And what happened to that legacy? Within years of his death, it crumbled. Cersei proved to be an incompetent ruler who destroyed King's Landing. Jaime died in the rubble of the Red Keep trying to save the sister he loved. Tyrion survived, but as the broken, haunted man who killed his own father. The Lannister dynasty, Tywin dreamed would last 1,000 years, barely survived him by a decade. Maekar's legacy, by contrast, endured through the very thing Tywin failed to create. Children who were better than he was. Yes, Daeron and Aerion both died tragic deaths, one from disease and one from madness, but Aemon became one of the wisest Maesters in history, serving the realm at the Wall for decades and providing crucial guidance during some of the Night's Watch's darkest hours. And Egg became a king who genuinely tried to make life better for common people, who fought against the entrenched privilege of the great houses, who understood that true strength came not from fear, but from justice. When Egg died at Summerhall, trying to bring dragons back into the world to strengthen the realm, even that tragedy was born from good intentions rather than selfish ambition. Think about the advice each man gave his children. Tywin's wisdom to his children can be summed up as, the family name is all that matters. Never forget what you are. Everyone is either with us or against us, and show no weakness ever. Fear is the only currency that matters. He taught them to be hard, to be calculating, to care only for the family, and to destroy anyone who threatens it. And the result? Cersei became paranoid, cruel, and ultimately self-destructive. Jaime spent years conflicted between duty and love, honor and family, never able to reconcile the person he could have been with the person his father demanded he be. Tyrion, the one who might have been the best of them, was so damaged by his father's hatred that even his greatest achievements were overshadowed by his trauma. Maekar's lessons were different. He taught his sons about duty, yes, but also about honor. When he marked every anniversary of Baelor's death, mourning the brother he had accidentally killed, he taught his sons that actions have consequences and that grief for those we've harmed is not weakness, but humanity. When he allowed Egg to travel with Duncan, he taught his youngest son that wisdom can come from unexpected places and that the common people of the realm matter. When he kept Bloodraven as his hand of the king, despite not liking him personally, he taught his sons that effective governance sometimes means working with people you don't care for if they serve the realm well. There's a beautiful quote from Maester Aemon reflecting on his father that really captures who Maekar was. We shall see it. And my father, he never thought the throne would pass to him, and yet it did. He used to say that was his punishment for the blow that slew his brother. I pray he found the peace in death that he never knew in life. This tells us everything. Maekar carried the guilt of Baelor's death with him always. He never wanted to be king. He took the throne out of duty when it fell to him through tragedy after tragedy. And through all of it, his sons knew that their father was a man capable of remorse, capable of pain, capable of putting duty above personal desire. That's the kind of lesson that shapes good men. Compare that to Tyrion's reflection on Tywin. He was a great man, a cold man. He didn't hate me because I'm a dwarf. He hated me because I killed my mother. Or perhaps he just hated that I'm a stain on his perfect legacy, his perfect family. There's no warmth there, no understanding, no respect even in death. Just the recognition that his father was great in power but fundamentally failed at the most basic human level of caring for his children. Let's examine a crucial moment for each father that really defines them. For Maekar, it's the aftermath of the trial of 7 at Ashford. His brother Baelor lies dying, killed by a blow from Maekar's own mace during the combat. Duncan the Tall, the hedge knight who started this whole mess, kneels beside the dying prince. Maekar could have executed Duncan on the spot. He could have raged at the injustice of losing his beloved older brother. Instead, he lets Duncan live, recognizes that what happened was an accident of combat and that Aerion's cruelty started the chain of events. In his grief, Maekar still finds justice. This is a man capable of seeing past his own pain to what's right. For Tywin, the defining moment is probably when Tyrion kills him. Tywin is in his privy, Appropriately enough, when his dwarf son appears with the crossbow, Tyrion has just learned that Tywin orchestrated everything. The destruction of Tyrion's first wife Tysha, the humiliation, all of it. And when Tyrion confronts him, what does Tywin do? He denies Tyrion's worth one final time. He calls Tysha a whore, he refuses to acknowledge Tyrion as his son, he reaches for a weapon. In the very last moments of his life, Tywin Lannister cannot bring himself to show any love or understanding to his child. And so Tyrion shoots him, twice, and the great Lord Tywin dies on the toilet, the undignified end to a man who valued dignity and legacy above all else. The historical verdict on these two men is fascinating. Maekar is generally remembered as a capable king who presided over a relatively peaceful period between Blackfyre rebellions. He's not counted among the great Targaryen monarchs like Jaehaerys the Conciliator or Daeron II, but he's respected. More importantly, he's remembered as the father of Aegon the Unlikely, and that association adds luster to his memory. Through his son's goodness, Maekar's legacy is enhanced rather than diminished. Tywin, by contrast, is remembered as one of the most effective and ruthless political operators in Westerosi history. But his family's collapse immediately after his death has to color that legacy. All his schemes, all his ruthless efficiency, and for what? His daughter went mad and blew up the Great Sept. His golden son died trying to save her from her own destruction. His despised dwarf son survived as hand to a foreign queen and lived to see the Lannister name dragged through the mud. A dynasty that would last 1,000 years? It barely made it through one generation after Tywin's death. This brings us to the core question. What makes a good father in a world like Westeros, where power and legacy matter so much? Is it the ability to mold your children into perfect political instruments? Is it teaching them to be feared above all else? Or is it giving them the tools to be better than you were, even if that means letting them make choices you wouldn't have made? Maekar understood something that Tywin never did, that children are not extensions of their parents' will, but separate human beings who will ultimately make their own choices. You can guide them, teach them, protect them, but you cannot control them without breaking something essential in them. Maekar's willingness to let Egg travel with Duncan, to let Aemon serve as a Maester, to even mourn Daeron the Drunken as a true son, these acts of acceptance created children who were capable of greatness in their own ways. Tywin's refusal to accept anything less than his specific vision of perfection created children who were either crushed by impossible expectations or who rebelled against them catastrophically. Cersei tried so hard to be Tywin in a dress that she became a paranoid tyrant. Jaime could never reconcile the dutiful son with the man he actually was, leading to a lifetime of inner conflict. Tyrion, the one who perhaps most deserved Tywin's respect for his intelligence and political acumen, was so damaged by paternal hatred that even his victories feel hollow. There's also the question of how these men handled their own pain and trauma. Maekar accidentally killed his brother, the crown prince, the man he loved and respected. He carried that guilt for the rest of his life, openly acknowledged it, used it to make himself more careful and thoughtful. His pain made him more human, more understanding. When Egg later faced difficulties, Maekar could relate to the burden of unintended consequences. Tywin's trauma came from having a weak father who nearly destroyed House Lannister's reputation, and his response was to become the opposite extreme. So ruthless, so hard, so unforgiving that nothing soft could survive around him. He couldn't allow weakness because he had seen what weakness cost. But in refusing to show any vulnerability, any humanity, he became something monstrous. The worst part is that Tywin never seemed to realize that in trying so desperately not to be his father, Tytos, he guaranteed that his children would never know the love that even weak Tytos had shown to his family. In the end, the comparison between Prince Maekar Targaryen and Lord Tywin Lannister shows us that true strength as a father doesn't come from ruthless control, from viewing your children as assets to be deployed, or from demanding perfection. True strength comes from the much harder work of accepting your children as they are, guiding them with wisdom rather than ruling them with fear, and building a legacy not of terror, but of genuine respect and love. Maekar was the father Tywin tried to be, but failed in every meaningful way. One man's children became kings and maesters who served the realm with honor. The other man's children became casualties of his ambition, broken in different ways by a father who could never love them more than he loved power and legacy. As we close, consider this. When Maester Aemon lay dying at the wall, nearly blind and ancient beyond measure, his thoughts turned to his family. He spoke of Egg, of his father Maekar, of dragons and duty. Despite a long life of sacrifice and service far from power, there was peace in those memories. Now imagine Tywin's children at his funeral. Cersei likely relieved he's dead and unable to control her anymore. Jaime conflicted, still trying to figure out if his father ever truly loved him. Tyrion absent, hiding after killing the man who tormented him his whole life. That's the real difference between these fathers. One left a legacy of peace even in sacrifice. The other left only resentment and ruin. Prince Maekar Targaryen wasn't perfect. He was stern, sometimes harsh, deeply militaristic, and burdened by regret. But he was capable of growth, of accepting his children's choices even when they disappointed him, and of putting duty and honor above his own pride. That's what made him a father Tywin Lannister could never be, no matter how hard he tried to control his legacy through his children. In Westeros, as in our world, the measure of a father isn't in how much power he wields or how feared he is, but in whether his children become better people than he was. By that measure, Maekar succeeded where Tywin utterly failed, and that, perhaps more than crowns or gold or military victories, is the true measure of a man's worth.